All right, welcome to a tutorial on rounded corners and shape in Flutter. So what we're going to do is go through all the widgets listed here and make them circular and give them a rounded border. It's not quite the same thing because when something is a circle, we want it to be a perfect circle no matter what the shape of the parent widget is. If we just put the border radius really big, it might just be like an oval. So making something perfectly circular is different than making it just have rounded corners, and we're going to do both for all of these widgets here. So card, checkbox, list tile, container, elevated button, icon, image, outline button, and text button, and then the timestamps for each one be in the description if you only care about one of them. So yeah, let's get into it. What we got here is an app that just shows you what the widgets are going to look like, and we got two tabs, one for rounded, one for circular. And we're going to start, just go top down and look at the code for each of them. So first off, we're looking at a circular card. So that's this widget here. Cards, the shape of them can be modified in theme. So some widgets, you can make it so that underneath this theme, everything is going to have the same border radius, which is really nice. If you're changing one card to have rounded corners of a certain radius, it's pretty likely that in your entire app, you want all cards to have the same border radius. So in that case, you definitely would want to put that into the theme data of your app. Now this is just a theme widget, so only this card is going to have that so that the two of them can be different. But we can see how this is going to work here. So we're going to copy our current theme and add a card theme. And making it circular is very simple. All we got to do is pass in circle border, and it will be a circle of the size of the child in there. So just to make it big enough to see, we got a container that's a child with the card, and it's aligned in the center there with the text, and it's a perfect circle with the radius of 50. So let's go over to the rounded card, and very similar. It's still in the card theme there, but we're going to use a different class, rounded rectangle border. And what it allows us to do, and we're going to see this quite a few times in this tutorial, is it's going to allow us to choose the corner, choose the radius of each corner. So a lot of the times you're going to want all of the corners to be the same radius, but you can also go .only if you only want like the top left and top right corners to be a certain radius, or you want them all to be different for some crazy reason. You're able to do that. But for this one, it's all, and they're all 20, so those are the rounded corners there. And the child is the same, it's just a container there. All right, moving on, let's go to the checkbox list tile. So checkbox list tile, let's start with circular again, is right here. There is actually two different radiuses with a checkbox list tile. The first is the shape of the list tile itself, which can be a circle, but you almost certainly don't want it to be a perfect circle. And then there's the border radius and shape of the actual checkbox. This is the one that you're probably wanting to change because the default ones have really pointy corners, and I don't really like the look of them. I like them to be at least a little rounded. So here, what we're going to do is, again, put it in the theme. If you want to change one checkbox to be a circle, it's pretty likely you want every single one in your whole app to be a circle. So you're going to put this theme data into your material app, and you're going to pass it a checkbox theme. And you're going to say, make those a circle. And this is going to make all checkboxes circle, and there's some other widgets that also are checkboxes, like the raw checkboxes. Those are now going to be circles as well, which is probably what you want. We can also change the shape of the list tile itself and give it a shape or a border if we want to. So just as an example here, it's another rounded rectangle border with a radius of 20. That smooths out the edges there and gives it a little border. And the animations for the inkwell all respect that shape border as well, which is really easy. So there's that. And we can go over to rounded. Rounded is very similar, but of course instead of passing in that circle radius, we're going to go and give it a rounded rectangle border again. So this one, it's hard to see because they're just not very big, but the corners of this guy is actually rounded. If we made this 0 or something, we could see that that's like the default with the pointy. Don't like the pointy. So that's it for checkboxes. Let's move on to container. So circular container, we're going to throw that into the decoration of the container. And unlike the other widgets, there's no container theme because containers are all over the place doing all sorts of different things. You don't want every single container to be a circle, but we can pass in a shape here. We pass in that shape of boxshape.circle if we want it to be a circle, and then it's going to be a circle, of course. If we go over to the rounded one, instead of passing in a shape, we're going to pass in a border radius. And this is going to control that radius as well. And this container is matching the width of the parent like all these other widgets, so that's why it's kind of novel. Okay, so one thing about this though is that you cannot put shape and border radius at the same time. If you do, there's an assertion here that throws, and that is going to break there. So you can't say it's a circle and have a border radius, because that doesn't make any sense, because the circle has no radius for each corner. It's just a perfect circle. Okay, let's go on to ElevatedButton. Okay, starting off with the circle again. Like the other widgets, we can put the theme for our ElevatedButton into our material app or a widget tree. And that widget is right here, so it's got the inkwell animation. And we can just pass in a shape. And we're going to give it a material state property.all of outline border. Now, this is fairly new. Instead of just saying you have this shape all the time, well, that is what we're doing. But now Flutter gives us the ability to say for different material states, we can give it a different border, which is not necessarily useful right now. But what this is really good for is something like having a different hover color. You can say the material state property when you're hovering is different than when you're not hovering. For border, that would change the shape of it as you're looking at it, which would probably be pretty confusing. So we're just going to say for any material state, we got a circle border. But we do have to use this. We can't just pass in a circle border. This is looking for a material state property. And we just gave it some elevation so it looks a little different than the container. It is a button, of course, so. And then it's just an elevated button with the text there. To make this one a size of 100, we also have this minimum size that we can pass in just because I wanted all the widgets to be the exact same size. So you can pass that into the theme as well. So let's go over to rounded. Rounded is the same, except for we're going to pass in that rounded rectangle border again, give it a border radius, and there it is right there. Okay, next up is the icon. So icons are already circular, but it comes up like maybe you want to have your icon with this floating action button kind of look, but it's not actually a button, it's just like a background. So this is a kind of like a filled in icon. Well, the way that I do that is I just put it in a container, which is circular in the way that we saw before with the box shape. And then we just give that container a color. And this color also has to go in the decoration. And then we put the icon as a child, and then it's going to be in there with an outline. Then we go over to the rounded. Of course, almost the exact same, except that's border radius of circular. This is the same as a container, it's just the parent with an icon in it. It's almost identical to the container, really. And next up is a weird one. It's the image. So the image, let's start with circular. That's this guy. So just found a random Flutter-like image on the internet, and we're using image.network for it. This one is a bit weird because image.network really does not like to be a certain width. And we say it's a width here, but this doesn't seem to always work that well. It's really a bit odd. So what I'm going to do is comment out this guy here, and we're going to see something weird. This image is now not a circle. Even though we've said the width, you have to be 100, it goes to the width of the parent. And I think that this is actually a bug with the framework. But using this combination of clip oval and a container does seem to make it a perfect circle. This one's a bit weird. Not a huge fan of how this one is laid out for Flutter because image.network does not have a shape that you can just pass it, so we gotta do it through the parent. And the rounded image does work a little bit better. We can use this clip R rect and just pass it a border radius directly. And that does work really quite nicely because if it's a rectangle, well then it's going to fit its parent anyways and don't need to worry about it being a perfect width and height. So yeah, that's the image there. Okay, next one is OutlinedButton. Yeah, we'll go back to circular. Okay, OutlinedButton, which is down here, works almost identically to ElevatedButton except we're using OutlinedButton theme. So we use OutlinedButton theme outline button theme data, and we pass in whatever shape we want. In this case, it's a circle border. And if we go to rounded right here, it's obviously identical except with the rounded rectangle border. Now there's a weird thing here with TextButton, and we're going to see that next. And TextButton is internally pretty much identical to OutlinedButton, except for it has no border. So if we look at TextButton here, and we give it a shape that's a circle, and we give it a border, we can make OutlinedButton and TextButton look absolutely identical. Of course, because OutlinedButton just has an outline. If we put an outline around the text one, then it's pretty much an outline button. So this is a bit weird. It allows you to just do whatever you want with these themes. So I don't really recommend doing this, because if you want your text button to have an outline, then you should just use outline button. And we probably don't want to actually change the shape of the text button so that it is like more like a true text button that just has text and nothing else going on. But Flutter allows us to do whatever we want there, which is quite nice. So looking at the rounded one, we're just going to use that rounded rectangle border in the shape instead. And that's down here. Oh, sorry, it's down here because of this text button. There was one last widget that we're going to look at just as a bonus, which is a very convenient widget. It doesn't really have a rounded rectangle counterpart, and that widget is a CircleAvatar. And CircleAvatar is one of the handiest widgets to just put something in a circular background of a certain color. Here we can just put the text, and it puts it in here. And this is arguably a lot easier than doing that with the container. It's just really convenient, and we can set the radius, we can set the colors, and do stuff like that. This is a very, very good widget for doing things like initials and profile pictures, or like a Spotify album cover sort of circle. That's really what it's intended for. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Put some circles on stuff. So again, we looked at the card, CheckBoxListTile, container, elevated button, icon, image, outline button, text button, and CircleAvatar.